Hello, today I'm going to talk about targeted individuals and religion, in particular monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Zoroastrianism, if I pronounce that correctly. Monotheistic religions were very early social programming mechanisms. Started in Persia with Zoroastrianism, and also in the Middle East with the nation of Israel, and that's about over 4,000 years ago. And basically, it's an artificial morality that was imposed on particularly the Israelite group of people, artificial morality that didn't evolve naturally but was imposed on the people somewhat gradually, and basically to distinguish the Israelites from other people and to control them. It was a control mechanism, but it worked by keeping the Israelites separate from the pagan peoples, and also kept them from intermingling with the pagan peoples, which was an important part of the Hebrew faith. And it kept the people as a whole collectively focused on what the powers that controlled Israel, what they wanted the people to focus on. In other words, everybody, whether they be examples of an Israelite or whether they be rebels, they were all to various degrees focused on the goal of the Hebrew nation. And that was something that was difficult to do, especially at that time when the Israelites had neighbors on all the borders, and there's lots of interaction with other foreign lands and foreign peoples in the Middle East. And the Hebrew leaders wanted to keep their Hebrew stock racially separate from the other peoples, and also keep them culturally separate, so that the Hebrew people stayed focused on the goals that the leadership wanted the people to be. The leadership wanted everyone to be focused on and contribute to. So that's what the monotheistic religions were designed to do. They're designed, whether it be Judaism or Christianity or Islam, it's designed to create a group of peoples that collectively focus on a certain goal that the controlling powers wanted those people to be focused on. And it's fairly efficient. It's not perfect at all, but it's very efficient, and it survives the test of time. And some examples of the artificial morality of the monotheistic faiths are, for example, telling the people not to covet their neighbors or other properties, or not to covet anything. I mean, that's immediately understood as an automatic desire for people to covet what their neighbors have. Coveting doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do anything about it. They're not going to steal or do anything if they just think about it. But in the Ten Commandments, the law of Moses, it says they shall not covet their neighbor's wife or anything else of their property. And that's something that's getting into mind control, when you're telling them what to think or what not to think. And another area of not natural imposition on the people was the sexual purity rules and laws of the Hebrew faith, both in all Hebrew faiths, whether it be Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. The sexual purity is very unusual, and that was definitely a very strong area of social control, because that's such a natural impulse of people that when you take away the ability of the people to express their body's desires, what you do, you start creating, maybe among a certain minority of the population, people that act sort of freakish, and they become freakish, and they have fetishes, and it develops strange psychological behavior of possibly a minority of people. And not everyone's affected this way, but some people are, and it's evident in our strict societies, like the West European based nations, or anywhere we have Christianity, Judaism, and the Abrahamic faith. You have strange sexual fetishes or drives among a minority of the population, and it's just not natural. But it's an area. It's a way to impose control on population, whether they follow the rules or whether they don't follow the rules. It's a way to impose control collectively on a population, and controlling the vocabulary of the people. That's one way to control them, because that gets again into mind control. If you can't say certain words, at least not in polite company, well, that's starting to put a certain amount of control on your thinking, because what comes out of your mouth is what comes out of your brain. And so again, it's a control mechanism. And you also have the social controls in the Abrahamic faith cultures that you don't have in other cultures, because there was always more other cultures, religions, even though there was, of course, some controlment to them, they weren't near as severe as the Abrahamic faith. Those take the cake for being the most severe in their control mechanisms, and it shows in the cultures where Abrahamic faiths have taken root, is that you have all these strict guidelines, but of course people break guidelines, and that's when you get susceptibility to blackmail. And the strong moral mechanism expected for behavior in the Abrahamic faith cultures gave rise to shame in the people and guilt in the people. And this is mostly foreign in other cultures where you have more organic religions, but in the Abrahamic faith, which are linear, which where you have a beginning, a medium duration, and an ending, you have you have a different expectation. You have an expectation of behavior that contributes to the collective, and if you don't contribute to the collective in your behavior, for mostly that's in the moral codes, that's very important. Well, then that gives rise to blackmail. For example, you'll have people that maybe they have an inclination for a same-sex relationship, or you have people that want to commit adultery, or you have people that have different behavior modes that are shunned in the moral code, that gives rise to blackmail. Because as I mentioned, the Israelite cultures, in particular Judea and the 10 tribes of Israel, those 10 tribes of Israel were not really lost. They went north once they're captured by Assyria. They went north, and they went north into Georgia, and they went west then into Western Europe. And so Western Europe is the descendants of these lost 10 tribes, and that's why there's so many similarities between those people and Jews. And also some of these Khazar Jews they talk about that were in like Ukraine area, Georgia, those people, it would make sense to me that there'd be many Jews in those areas, because that's where the lost 10 tribes went through over 2,500, 2,600 years ago. They went through those areas on their way to Western Europe. So you might have a lot of Jews or Israelitish descendant people in those areas. And so it would make sense to me that you'd have Khazars that would be largely Jewish or Israelitish, and they convert to Judaism, 1,000 years ago. to me, that's plausible, and it's a feasible idea that would happen. And as I said before, there's a lot of telepathy in the Israelite descendant people, and that's why you have a lot of telepathy in Jews and a lot of telepathy in Western European descent people. And a religion like the ancient Hebrew religion and Judaism and Christianity really lends itself to manipulation of the people, because there's a strict moral code, and with these telepathic people running around, able to read thoughts and feelings, at least to a degree, of their neighbors, that really lends a lot of manipulation, because then you can try to catch people in morally compromising positions and blackmail them, which the Jews are excellent at. The Jews wrote the book on that. They are the masters of social manipulation and blackmailing people, because they know how to employ all these armies of telepaths to do their bidding and to keep track of people and to catch them in morally compromising positions and blackmail them to get what they want. Whether the person is a police officer, a politician, a business person, they work for the government in some capacity, those people are very much pursued by the Jewish crime network for blackmail, and the Jews are expert at that, and that is severely abused when they have a Abrahamic faith in that culture, and people know that their livelihoods could be extremely impacted if they're caught in compromising positions. So instead of risking everything, they'll just accept the blackmail and work with the Jewish crime network and keep things hush-hush. And so, and also in the religion, if the rabbis and the priests and pastors want someone in their under their sway or influence to be a true believer, it's very possible for the rabbi or pastor priest to set up a person to have a lot of answered prayer, and to be able to talk to people about what they're feeling and thinking and try to address it even before the person under influence has an ability to communicate their thoughts and feelings. The rabbi or pastor or priest could just say that they've heard from God, and God is telling them about a certain problem they have. Well, that problem they have might be something that the pastor or rabbi, if they're telepathic, read in the person's brain, or part of the the crime network has read that person's brain. They know the situation, and the pastor knows it, or the priest, rabbi, and that they communicate to the person who's ignorant of telepathy, and the person hears the pastor, priest, rabbi speak as if they've been talking to God about their problems. And it's a way to manipulate people, and that's why there's such a big effort to keep natural telepathy a secret from the masses, because if the masses figure out that there's a certain percentage of the population that's telepathic, and that they're able and willing to manipulate that telepathy in the ignorance of the common person, well, then that could change things rapidly and drastically. So they want to keep telepathy, keep it as in an area of falsivity, which it's not. It's very true. It's common as day, actually. But and as far as the targeted individual, I don't see how the targeted individual in modern day life, 2018, should be pursuing any Abrahamic faith seriously, because it's so subject to manipulation by the telepathic network that, you're going to be praying and they're going to be reading your prayers, and then they're going to try to set up some situation that answers your prayer, or have a religious person that you feel might be an authority to address your concerns, and they could easily manipulate you. I mean, you're not a regular person, you're a targeted individual, and you have to be very tactical in everything you do. And concentrating on your problems and then expecting a higher power to solve them, when a telepathic network member could be reading your prayer, and then they can go ahead and try to make answer your prayer themselves, and then in doing that figure out some way to try to manipulate you in some way. I mean, that's dangerous. I mean, you're really kind of setting yourself up, especially if you're in a Western country and you're trying to be a Christian. I mean, you're really setting yourself up as a targeted individual. I mean, you got to be more tactical. You got to be discreet. You got to kind of be like a spy. And well, anyway, I just want to go over that and let everyone know what I thought about that.